Today, we're going to talk about what else affects you and your orgasm, especially when it comes to sexual satisfaction. So, the sexual satisfaction is very important, okay? And I have some points here. There are several things that affect it, but I have some major points I want to talk about. And that's the personality type, your personality, the relationship factors, and your body image. There are so many other issues and problems that can happen that can affect your orgasm. We've talked about a lot of them, right? Go back to my videos. But I'd like to really focus on these three today. And I'm going to start with relationship factors because again, we're all trying to get into relationships. Some of you are married, some of you are in long-term relationships, and some of us are trying to get into relationships. And I want you to understand some dynamics right now so that you'll understand that in a relationship, you need to be able to modify some behaviors and some information so that you will be able to input into relationship things that will help your orgasm and the relationship in general. So, in a relationship, there are really three factors that overall help the relationship sexually. We've said this before, your sexual assertiveness. So when you're assertive, you're confident, and you're able to communicate your needs to your partner, that helps the sexual relationship and helps your orgasm in a long-term relationship. Your attitude, your positiveness towards sex is very crucial and very important in the relationship. So if you're positive, you enjoy sex and you're always asking for it and you take the initiative and you go for it and you show your partner that this is something that's important to you as well, hopefully it's as important to him, then that also will help the relationship and again, help the orgasm. And the third thing that affects the relationship is how close you are to your partner. So your relationship closeness is going to also help the self-satisfaction in terms of your orgasm and the relationship. Very important to know those factors, okay? It's also important to know that when you do have that orgasm, right, the big O, are there times that you are not satisfied? And the answer is yes. So don't forget, even though you have an orgasm, you may not be satisfied. And there are a number of reasons. And the most worrisome reason is, of course, it was against your will. So we don't want that to happen. Make sure it's between consenting adults and that you are not in any danger. So please remember to get help if you are in any situation that needs help. Just call 911, please. And you can understand that you can have an orgasm and be happy. That's what we want, right? The orgasm and have self-satisfaction, relationship satisfaction, and it goes on in terms of health, right? Your having an orgasm and not being satisfied is normally related also to things that might have happened in the relationship that didn't really go the way you wanted it to. So please, communication is key, okay? The other thing I want to talk about relationships is when you're in a relationship, especially long-term marriage, you can have the satisfaction, right, in the marriage, but not sexually. So there was a study that was done. If you want the study, let me know. I can send that to you, where they found that there were marriages that they had that were satisfied, in terms of the relationship and the marriage, but sexually they were not satisfied. Then they had marriages where they were sexually satisfied in the marriage and sexually satisfied in the sexual intercourse. Then they had the marriage where they were not satisfied and they were satisfied sexually, and then they were also marriages where they were satisfied and not satisfied sexually. So you had those four categories, and they put them in a group, and they found that the highest number of relationships was the marriage that had a great relationship, but sexually they were not satisfied. All right. So we know that happens because that's why there's a high rate of cheating and people committing adultery and getting out of the relationship and having sex with someone else because they're not satisfied sexually. So we know that's going to be the highest group. But the second highest group is the marriage that is happy in the relationship and happy sexually. So satisfied with their relationship, their marriage, and satisfied with their sex. That was the second highest group, and I wanted you to know that. So there's still hope. You can get into that relationship, and especially if you follow some of my ideas and some of my recommendations, you'll get a situation where you'll be in that group where you'll have marriage satisfaction, right? Relationship wise, and sexual satisfaction, which is the game plan. Okay. The other thing I want you to be aware of are traits and behaviors within people individually that can actually affect long term relationships. For example, if you have a woman that engages in frequent sexual intercourse and she orgasms frequently when she gets into a relationship, she's going to be satisfied. She's going to really have the increased chance of having an orgasm, right? So the more she has sex and the more she orgasms and the more she has intercourse, when she gets into that long-term relationship, she's going to be satisfied sexually and continue to have her orgasms. So that trait that you have before you get into the relationship and that behavior is an indication of great satisfaction. But there's that woman, the older woman that has no partner, that really enjoys erotic literature and media and insists on direct genital stimulation and needs masturbation. She masturbates a lot. That sort of person that has those traits and behaviors tend to not be satisfied when they get into long term relationships. So take note of that. When someone is described like that, they found from studies that they generally do not get a lot of satisfaction in the relationship. Or there's a lot of contention, a lot of arguments because she doesn't get what she wants, generally because she's a little bit more demanding and a little bit more off the general rail of what people want in relationships. So again, that's what studies are showing. And the third sort of trait and behavior that they studied was the woman that understands the physiological responses of her body sexually, especially during the orgasm, which we've gone through in details. So I want you to remember all those things we talked about, and all the factors and descriptions of the cues and the signs you're going to see. So you get familiar with your body's response, and you will now be able to know what to expect when you're having your orgasm, right? So they found that the third class of woman is the woman that knows what she's going to get. She does have an increased frequency of orgasm when she does, and she wants an erotic, a gentle, a seductive activity, nothing too crazy, right? So she tends to want something more touchy, right? Feely, and she wants to have that slow rise to the orgasm, right? Using her partner's body and touch, and of course, interaction with great communication. And you'll find that she is generally the sort of person that will also want to have breast stimulated and want the genital stimulated at the same time. She's going to want a lot of things going on, but it's more of a one on one, person on person interaction. And she also, when she gets into that relationship, is going to generally have a lot more orgasms and be satisfied immensely, okay? So just remember that because I want you to take note of those things in relationships. So depending on what trait and what behavior you have, you'll find that the relationship can almost be predicted based on how you are before you get into a relationship. Now, the other thing is in a relationship that someone that feels that it is important, sex is important, that I must make sure that sex happens in my relationship with my partner. It leads to having more of a sexual desire and having more orgasms and having more satisfaction in the relationship sexually and in the long-term relationship, okay? Makes sense if you make it important, okay? Also, it's important to know that anxiety and low self-desire will impact the relationship and decrease your chances of having a successful relationship and having a great orgasm. It's going to decrease because you have anxiety, which will make you distracted, will make you not focus, and generally not make the orgasm possible. If you're severely anxious, get to a doctor like me or someone that can help with your anxiety. And that low desire also needs some help. We've got to go into a physical and find out what's going on. But most importantly, you need to be aware. If it's there, there's something you can do about it to get it better. So just remember that, okay? And I also want you to know that they did some research where they found that the woman that masturbates and finished high school masturbates a lot, and a lot is at least 2 or 3 times a week, and finish high school has a higher chance of having orgasms with their partner in the future. Again, this is penile vaginal sexual intercourse. So this is something studies show that even over some other studies that I've read, that over the years they found that women that have a higher level of education, high school and above, actually have more orgasms than those that don't. Interesting piece of information there. And the other information that I wanted to mention in relationships is that you have satisfaction, you have passion, you have intimacy, and you have global quality relationships. These are things that you find in terms of characteristics in relationships. And the two most important ones that will lead to you having a satisfying sexual relationship and a satisfying relationship in the long term are intimacy and global quality of the relationship. So that global quality, if you have a great relationship, you're going to have great sexual satisfaction and a long-term relationship, which will also improve and include your orgasms. So just note those factors. You need intimacy and you need global quality relationship and you need communication for that. So it goes back to communication. I know studies show that some people don't like to communicate, but you've got to insist and improve communication. Go back and listen to my talk on communication because that was really, really important. And I love the fact that we need to force the fact because we are all bad communicators. And when we improve, we'll improve our relationship and our orgasms and our sexual satisfaction. Okay. Now, we talked about relationship factors. I wanted to get that out of the way because that's so important. But look at this personality type. When you have these personality types, your orgasm is going to be difficult to achieve. Isn't that interesting? When you self blame yourself, when you self blame and you say, oh gosh, I'm guilty of doing this, I shouldn't have done that, always on the go about things that you should have done and didn't do. That's self blame. You cannot be walking around with self blame and think you're going to go into a relationship and have an orgasm because you're going to do the same thing in between the sheets and you don't want to do that. So stop immediately self blaming. Get some help, see a therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist. Let's get the self blame completely marked off this list. We do not want self blame. Repressed emotions. We want more expressed emotions, right? We want to be able to say to our partner how we feel. Again, communication. Once you repress your emotions, you are building up things within, which can turn physical, and you're not going to be able to enjoy any orgasms, okay? Or less likely, okay? So you do not want to repress your emotions. You want to actually express them happily and positively. And of course, with someone that wants to listen, right? A partner that wants to listen. They found that if you're more conservative, right? Being more conservative makes the chances of having an orgasm less. So we want you to be less conservative. And when we say less conservative, I mean in terms of relationships, understanding the other person, having rules and regulations and deal breakers. You've got to be able to be more malleable and accepting of your partner's sometimes faults, and you want to sort of give and take, right? So being less stern or less serious would be something you want to aim for and not being more conservative. And these are things you can do with, again, help, therapy, reading, books, and practice. So I would encourage all my clients to be more liberal, more free, and more understanding when it comes to relationships and sex, of course. Negative attitudes. You do not want to have negative attitudes. We talked about that before. Positive attitudes help you get orgasms. So take away those negative attitudes and try and get help if you cannot get that more positive. Being more dependent on others. You do not want to be dependent on others because when you're dependent on others, you have no sense of self. And you have to be able to communicate to your partner what you're about. And you got to love yourself. Remember, I said that? Love, love, love yourself so that being dependent on others makes it as if you're not able to make your own decisions. And we need you to make your own decisions, especially when it comes to sexual decisions. So we do not want you to be more dependent on others. So we want you to be less dependent on others. Experience higher level of apprehension. Fear. You do not want to have fear when you're going into relationships. And in fear in life, you want to be fearless and be able to know that you can reach the stars, right? So I've always encouraged my clients and my patients, you can be what you want to be. Just be positive, stay focused, and go for it. In this case, when you're experiencing a high level of apprehension, it brings in fear, and you're not going to be able to communicate, and you're going to have less chance, again, of having that orgasm and that sexual satisfaction. Okay? Higher level of let's see, higher level of apprehension is the same thing, experience higher level apprehension. Introversion. So when you're an introvert, it's found through studies that you are less likely to have an orgasm. Isn't that interesting? So introversion is something that I like to say personally that I'm an introvert, but I've become an extrovert. So I believe I'm both, right? You can too. Times change, information, knowledge, life, experiences happen, and you realize you cannot be an introvert all the time. Sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. So, being able to do both is going to be crucial for you. I want you to try and see whether you can become an extrovert sometimes also, and not purely an introvert. Disagreeable. You do not want to be disagreeable. Being disagreeable is a negative impact on the relationship and on your orgasm. Can you believe that? Studies show that you need to be agreeable. And so to be agreeable, you're going to try and be nice and open and see that other person's point of view, and you're going to try and communicate better, right? And be gentle in how you communicate. You're going to try and see whether the person can open up to you, right? And if they don't, try next time. So agreeable means that you're going to try and see the other person's side of you and communicate. Now sometimes you're not going to want to do what the other person wants you to do, and I don't think you have to, but keeping the options open, meeting halfway, being able to for them to see your point of view and for you to see their point of view is very important. You don't have to say yes, 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 yes to everything. I'm really against that. But if you say no, you say it in a nice, agreeable way, a nice way that the person can understand that you're considering different options and that you will get back to them. You can always say that, or that you really, really, I'm sorry, but you're really sorry for not being able to agree with them. But just know that you can't always be agreeable, but you want to not always be disagreeable, right? And do it in a nice way. So again, I don't want you to be agreeable all the time, but I do want you to the best of your ability to see whether you can stop being anti what the person's saying. Because sometimes you have to follow the leader, especially if it's a male, right? They should be leading properly. And if they're not leading properly, you don't agree. Okay. So emotionally unstable, instability. So if someone's, labile, their emotions are just all over the place, you're not going to be able to have great orgasms. So that orgasm has to have some emotional stability. And I'm not saying completely reined in and controlled. I believe there should be a nice balance of being in the mind in terms of thinking rationally and emotionally, being able to have some emotions that also come into play here. But if you have less emotions, that can be a thing that affects the relationship and your orgasms. You want to sort of an even balance there. So that's called emotional IQ. There are so many articles written on emotional IQ. Just reach out if you need some. I'll send you some articles. Otherwise, do some research on emotional IQ, because when you are emotionally unstable, you are not going to be able to have that orgasm. So you need to be calmer and cooler when it comes to certain things that go on in your life and your relationship. You can't lose control and throw things and start screaming and burn things and stuff like that. That is absolutely not acceptable. You are not going to be able to enjoy the relationship and that orgasm also between you and your partner. Not being able to open up to new experiences. That is another important one. You really need to be open to your partner's experiences. Again, within reason. I'm not asking you to agree to do things that you don't want to do completely out of, your experience. But sometimes just being, willing to try once might not hurt. Again, this is between two consenting adults, so I do not want this to happen with anybody but consenting adults, right? So you really want to be able to experience some new experiences, But then again, to each their own, you decide what you can experience. And if you cannot experience, you say, no, I'm not interested, very clear, and communicate that from the get go. Okay. Being not conscientious. So, being conscientious is sort of like not having some, uh, I don't want to say discipline, but being able to follow good intentions, right? Being able to do what you say you're going to do, right? So you want to be able to say that your word is your honor. So you want to be able to, if you say something to your partner, you're going to do something, you do it. And if you're not going to do it, you tell me you're not going to do it, or her. So not being conscientious is something that impacts your orgasm. So please try and know that you want to be more positive, more willing to do things by saying things and following through with those things that you say. And of course, making sure that it's going to benefit you and your partner. Okay? Right. So that's some of the personality types I wanted to talk to you about. And the last body image that will affect your orgasm is really very, very detailed. So I'm not going to go into all the different parts of the body image that can affect your orgasm, but I do want to focus on a scale, and I love scales. So we have the female genital self-image scale, and we have the male genital self-image scale. So the female self-image scale is actually 7 questions, and they are actually rated between 1, which is strongly disagree, to 5, strongly agree. So the lower your numbers are after you've done the questions, 7 questions, the less chance of you having female self-image confidence. The higher the score, the more confidence you have for your female self-image. And of course, that's the genitals, female genitals. And you'll find that people that have low scores do not orgasm well. Okay, that's why I'm bringing this up. So here we go. Number 1, I feel positively about my genitals. Number 2, I am satisfied with the appearance of my genitals. Number 3, I think my genitals work the way they are supposed to. Number 4, I think my genitals smell fine. Number 5, I think my genitals are normal. Number 6, I am not embarrassed by my genitals. Number 7, I am comfortable letting a healthcare provider examine my genitals, which reminds me, I hope you've all had your pap smears. All right, y'all, get those pap smears done. The genital exam does include a provider, female or male, examining you and getting that checked out. All right. So with this, again, the more dissatisfaction you're going to have is lower the score. That more satisfaction, the higher the score. So you always want to be able to improve the score by getting some help. And I'm not going to go into surgeries that you can do because that's another deep topic, but you do have an opportunity to speak to your provider and get some cosmetic surgery done in those areas that you want to have considered. But I'm really not encouraging you to do that unless there's a functional problem. So if there's no functional problem, I don't really want to encourage you to do that. Again, there's a little talk I had that shows over 1,000 vulva shapes. So we should generally be pleased. Again, generally be pleased with our vulva. But again, if it's something that's dissatisfying you and distracting you and making you not enjoy sex, that's something you need to talk to your primary care provider or your GYN about to make sure that that is addressed. But I wanted you to know there's a scale. So if you're not sure where you are, I can send this to you. Let me know. You can find out how you feel regarding your genitals. For the men, there is a 19 scale version. I'm not going to go to the 19. Instead, I'm going to do the 5-item version. For the men, I am satisfied with the appearance of my penis. And the scale is, the range is 1 to 5. Yes. 1, I strongly disagree, and 5, I strongly agree. So the lower the number, the worse you have in terms of your imaging, the image of your genitals, how you feel about your genitals. So the lower it is, the more dissatisfied you are. Number one, I am satisfied with the appearance of my penis. Number two, I am comfortable showing my penis to a sexual partner. Number three, I feel good about my penis size. Number four, I am confident about the way my penis looks. Number five, I think my penis is attractive. Again, there was a 19-item version. It was very detailed, and some of the studies, they felt it was a little bit too much. It wasn't fair, so they came up with the 5-item version, which is very simple. And so if you answer the questions again, 1 is you strongly disagree, and 5 is you strongly agree. The higher the numbers, the better the confidence and the satisfaction in your genitals. The lower the number, the less confidence you have and less satisfaction in your genitals. And that's all correlated to the orgasm. The higher confidence you have, the higher satisfaction you have, the more the orgasm, which is under the body image. And yes, with men, can they do something about it? Less than the women, I know that. But yes, there are certain things that men can do. But I really wouldn't talk about that now. That's again something you talk to your primary care doctor or your urologist or a doctor that does things that, like me, that I, in the meantime, if you're able to function with it, go for it. I know there are several reasons why men might want to intervene, but again, that is something that you need to talk to another doctor that specializes in that so that you can get some great advice from them. My point today was to point out to you that yes, there are things that can affect your orgasm that you can do something about. And if you need help, reach out to a doctor like myself that does some of these treatments, and we'll see whether we can improve it. But overall, we should be satisfied with ourselves and again improve ourselves where we can within reason and safely and with the advice of a professional that knows something that will help you improve and give you the best advice that you need. Okay, good seeing you. I will see you tomorrow. It is Halloween tomorrow, so I'm going to have a little surprise for you. See you then. All right, take care. Bye. Have a good night.